Well, hello there everyone! The Dark Souls 3 video is still a work in progress, but thankfully that's been going well so far. In the meantime, here's something completely different. Well, kind of. For a long time now, we've seen a rise in video games as a unique entertainment medium, and taking advantage of that uniqueness by asking a question: can a game tell a good story without any dialogue? To answer this question very simply, yes. To put it a bit differently, I think it's an interesting challenge that, when done right, provides an experience that can be enjoyed by all people with no language barrier separating us. And Hyper Light Drifter tries its best to join those ranks, but whether or not it succeeded will be up to the individual. I think for the most part though, it does a good enough job, and we've also got some bosses to talk about. At only 5 bosses and 3 mini-bosses, this won't be a super long ranking, but still, it's got enough for me to talk about, and I will give each mini-boss their own spot since one of them does enough to stand out and the other 2 can make up the bottom of the list. So let's dive into it. Number 8, the Summoner. While there's no boss in this game I hate, I do think the mini-bosses leave a lot to be desired, pretty much just relying on a single attack throughout the fight. And the worst of the bunch is the Summoner, as all she does is float around the arena and have her bits shit out projectiles at you. This could be a threat, but near the end of the game, you'll have been able to obtain both projectile deflection and shield dash easily enough. I don't even have projectile deflection here, and I'm still not really struggling. There's not much for me to say about this fight because there's just not much to her. I guess it's neat how she disguises herself as a module, but that's about it, and despite being fairly late into the game, she's got low health, so you can pretty easily tear her apart with your shotgun as well. Number 7, the Sorcerer. The Sorcerer falls into the same sort of trappings as Summoner, with only having a single projectile attack, but thankfully it's more involved than Summoner's was with that bit of tracking that goes on and the explosive after effect, and at half health the arena does become more perilous, which keeps things a bit more interesting, as opposed to Summoner, who doesn't really change at all. I did learn something pretty funny though, and that's if you and the boss simultaneously kill each other, it actually gives you the win because you'll spawn outside the boss room, and when you walk back in, you'll find their corpse and 3 chips just sitting there for you to pick up, which I know very well it wasn't exactly intentional or meant to be funny, but it was hands down the funniest moment in this game for me. And that's the reason why it gets above Summoner. Number 6, the Emperor. From what I can tell, the Emperor is intended to be the first boss of the game, and is also the most hateable character in the game, as you get to see his brutality on full display throughout the level design, and him eating an otter alive in his intro cutscene. The Emperor is a slow and lumbering foe, mostly either slamming the ground or throwing out explosives at you, but he can also summon in those kamikaze plants which are dangerous to you, but if you take them out and they blow up next to him, it's going to be a guaranteed stun, so that kind of keeps you in mind of positioning and thinking about other options. Despite being the first boss, he actually is one of the hardest hitting foes in the entire game, with him able to easily chunk off 4 HP in an instant, so you're never more than 2 hits away from death. He's not lighting the world on fire, but he does a good job and is definitely the first boss players should tackle. Plus, you get the shotgun for beating him, which is the most overpowered weapon in the game. I'm not kidding when I say this. You'll be manning the shotgun and using your sword for its bonus effects and as a way to recharge your shotgun once you get it. It is that good. Number 5, the Archer. From the boss of the first dungeon to the boss of the last dungeon, the Archer is weird. The Wastelands in general is an oddly paced area because up to this point, there's no real mini-bosses at all, and then you get here and you have 3 mini-bosses all thrown into this one area, followed by a main boss at the end, which it definitely tries, but he only feels a little bit above the mini-bosses he commands. Even weirder, despite being the second to last boss in the game, he has by far the lowest HP of any major boss at only 45. As for the fight itself, he's your ranged focus area denial boss, so the challenge is more about getting to him, but as long as you aren't reckless with your positioning, you can delete him with your shotgun just as easily as most of the other bosses in the game, since he may be evasive, but he's not that evasive, and if you were to come here with shield dash or projectile deflection, you'd completely neuter any challenge this fight has. I intentionally avoided doing so just so it would last a little bit longer, and it still died in under a minute. Number 4, the Reaper. This next part's going to be a quick one, not because he's a bad boss, but because this fight's only going to last 30 seconds, whether you win or you die. The Reaper stands out for surprising you and spawning in right the heck out of nowhere, being this hyper-aggressive boss with the smallest health bar in the game, but it ends up being like a samurai duel where the one who screws up first is going to be the one who loses, because there's basically no time to heal in this fight unless you get lucky with a scythe throw. It's a quick but fun battle that I enjoy, and it doesn't really drag out, which makes it stand out and is a bit more interesting. And again, the boss just kind of dropping in with no warning makes it feel more like a threat than the other mini-bosses did. Number 3, the Hanged Man. The Western Zone can be the first area you explore, but holy crap, I do not recommend coming here first, because the Hanged Man is one of the most aggressive bosses in the game, and with 50 HP, he's got enough bulk to not be bursted down quickly either. On top of that, the enemies here are also pretty tough. I think overall he does a good job filling that role of the intense challenge, as this is another fight that won't take too long, but also it's here to say go back to town and upgrade your stuff if you haven't done so already, because the dash boost is basically a must for this game. And yeah, if you don't have it, your time in this game is going to be miserable. However, there are 2 bits that hurt this fight for me and make it not as fun as I think it should have been. For one, I don't like that he can summon enemies. Granted, these warriors are pretty cool foes to fight, but they're also some of the toughest regular enemies in the game, with good range, speed, and enough health that you probably won't be able to burst them down unless you get a perfect shotgun blast. Second is his sprite. Now, it looks really cool, but it's an unfortunate case of an awesome asymmetrical design that gets hurt by sprite mirroring. It doesn't kill the fight for me, but it is a bit lame watching the footage in playback and noticing that. Still, I do think it's a good boss, it's a lot of fun, and the music is one of the more standout tracks in the game. Number 2, the Hierophant. Up north in the mountains, this cult leader is actually a really fun boss fight. Hopefully you've upgraded your dash before this fight, because you're going to be on the move a lot, but this Master of Dark Magic ends up being an enjoyable and engaging boss fight, and while not super hard, he is fun, and it's interesting having a caster boss that isn't a projectile-focused foe. Instead, he targets the set areas you're in, or he'll target certain rows and columns of the arena, which kind of plays with the whole thing of it being a super tiled location. He can also summon enemies, but all of them will die in a single hit, and that includes anything from your slash dash to a basic bullet from any of your guns. So they're more like a minor obstacle or an attack you work around as opposed to a major threat. And you get to fight this boss, and he actually does put up a good fight. I think overall, while he's not hard, he's one of the most enjoyable fights in the game, and probably the best one out of the 3 early game bosses you can go for, though I'd recommend saving him for your second or third trip, because he's another case where he is much harder than the Emperor is. Still, I think it's fun, and I think the twist at the end of him just being 2 crows standing on top of one another is actually kind of funny in a macabre sort of way. Number 1, Judgment. I'm not quite sure if Judgment is a boss that's at the peak of Great Tier, or if he's gonna just barely sneak his way into Amazing Tier. I think I'll have to play the game again to be really sure on that, but I can safely say I think he's the best boss in this game. And either way, Judgment has an awesome design and has progressing difficulty, which I like, as he'll become more aggressive as he loses HP, firing out more bullets, increasing the number of black tendrils, adding more charges to his attacks, and so on and so forth. The music here also stands out as being this hauntingly atmospheric track, just selling how wrong this whole fight is, as it provides a fun challenge to end the game on. I wouldn't say he's the hardest fight in the world, but the game maxes you out on health kits before you get in here, and he still took me 5 attempts to beat, when the Hanged Man only took me 3 attempts, and every other boss was a first try or second try affair. I also like how the game ends with you slaying the monster, but the Drifter still suffers from his heart condition. It just kind of goes to show the world may be fixed, and you may have handled a lot of problems, but your personal trials still remain. On top of that, I think Judgment just has a lot of really cool different attacks that make him stand out as one of the most unique fights in the game, and with his high health pool, even with the full upgrades, the fight still lasts long enough that you don't just steamroll him, so you get to kind of see and enjoy everything. And again, I think his design is awesome and a little bit creepy. It's a great final boss to cap off this game that I enjoyed a lot, and I'm happy to say the final boss is the best boss in the game. Yes, I did it again. Get it out of your system. And that's all for this video. Hyper Light Drifter is a lot of fun and a game I can recommend to those at all curious if you saw this and it looked kind of interesting. It's one of the older games to come out in this sort of Souls adjacent style, but I think its distinct art style and fun enough combat loop make it worth trying. It's not a really long video game either. It's only about 5 hours for me to beat everything here. Granted, there is a New Game Plus mode and a couple extra additional things you can go out of your way for, which you could add more to your playtime and probably get about 10 to 15 hours out of it if you really wanted, but I enjoyed what I played. That's all I've got for this video. If you've enjoyed and want to see more content of varying quality from me, consider liking and subscribing. I've heard those buttons are supposed to light up when you say that. Do they? Well, let me know, I'm not sure. Otherwise, I should have 2 other videos you can see in the end card. That's all I've got for now. I will see you all next time with whatever video it may be. Until then, take care and have a good day.